Hey guys, welcome to this very special edition of All Things Cricket, and I'm joined by none other than Raunak Kapoor from all the way from Cricinfo. We have a special guest. My guest list has just kept on improving with time, and today I couldn't be more thrilled to have you, Raunak, here. Thank you so much for taking out the time, first of all. And how are things at your end after such a hectic season?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Keshav. I must first and foremost say that was a very impressive opening sting or opening bumper that you got. So I managed to check in with you just before we went live, and I know that you're in music. So I am immediately sort of impressed by the 5-second quality of work that I saw. So that's pretty cool. We obviously have a very professional setup working in a media house, but that's as good as anything we've produced. So we're done. First and foremost, that's starting on a nice note, a positive note. And thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure. It's always good to talk cricket. And imagine we're so obsessed with it that we're willing to talk cricket even after, like you said, a long, hectic tour. But no, all good. And I think we've just seen two really, really good teams play up to that level of cricket, right? It was a really important home series for India, more important than people understand, because it also showcased that we can host cricket, international cricket, for about 3 or 4 months without incident, which paves the way for a nice IPL, which paves the way for a T20 World Cup later this year. So forget that the cricket itself was amazing. The fact that this went on administratively, with no real glitches, was full kudos to the organizers. And the standard of cricket was befitting two powerhouses in the world. So I think it was brilliant. The Tests, the T20Is, and the ODIs all going down to the last over of the last ODI. I think it was we couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah, and when this opening theme was being played, and I could see your reactions down there in that small thumbnail. I knew that you probably didn't expect that. It's my original music, because I try to mix cricket and music somehow, somewhere, and this is what I came up with.
If you ever want to compose music for us, then I'm not in a position to hire you, but I could certainly recommend you to the right people. If your music wants to transcend and get into cricket, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I also did an IPL anthem actually last year, like a fan anthem. Yeah, fan anthem, not the official one, fan anthem, and it was appreciated by a lot of people. But anyway, coming back to our main topic, now that the season is done, how do you look back at it? Do you think that India is now a better team than when it all started, especially the slump back in Australia when 36 all out happened and all sorts of grey areas were highlighted, and it was all doomsday everywhere. So do you think from there and now where we are right now, we have found a lot of answers and a lot of new heroes?
Yeah, I think this was a really important few months for Indian cricket. Obviously, coming out of, I include the Australia tour in it. The fact that India bounced back in Australia after that 36 all out was remarkable, given, and we've said this to death, so I don't want to repeat and go on that, but given the amount of players that were missing, for an Indian team to beat a nearly full strength Australian team, or a full strength effectively Australian side, was just tremendous. Now, India has always beaten teams at home, so this comes as no real surprise that they managed to beat England, but there were significant odds stacked against them from the Australia tour to actually win the number of tests they needed to make the World Test Championship final. And I'm being honest, I don't think a lot of teams were making a big deal out of the World Test Championship final, because it suddenly assumed more complicated ways of getting through after the lockdown. And I think teams were more, okay, if we make it, great, we'll play it. If we don't, it's no big deal, because you saw that with England. They didn't play a full strength team when they could have, really taken this series or this tour very seriously. So they didn't do that. But I think from an Indian point of view, what I'm most impressed with was this team's ability to bounce back after adversity, whether that was after 36 for 9, losing key players. And even on this tour, after losing the first test in Chennai, they were up against it, right? They couldn't afford to go down 2-0. That would have effectively closed the WTC final doors. They were up against it in the T20Is. They started losing what we thought were important tosses. They lost all three tosses in the ODIs, again, where we thought that's a big advantage. So these are all really big pluses for a team that's learning how to win tough, right? For the last 3 or 4 years, this Indian team has been winning on the back of two or three superstar players,
Yeah.
whether that's Rohit, Shikhar, and Virat in ODIs and Bumrah in all formats. But that's pretty much it. And every time they didn't get going, this team was soft or this team was exposed. So India needed to move on from that. And I'm delighted in the last few months, that's exactly what they've done. New heroes seem to have emerged in every format. And selection, while I still think wasn't perfect, because I've been a big critique of Indian team of this Indian selection, for the simple reason that I think they're so good, they should be dominating all formats of cricket. I mean, it's remarkable that this team under Virat Kohli, with the kind of talent it possesses and the kind of reserves it has, is still, not winning ICC events for fun. I know it's hard, but this team is that good. I put them to the Australian team that was so dominant, under Ricky Ponting, and before that under Steve Waugh. So I really like that selections have gotten ruthless, and I hope that continues going forward, because they were a bit lucky in strange ways. Some injuries made for better selection. So we got to see Shan Kishan, we got to see Surya Kumar Yadav, we got to see Rishabh Pant in ODIs. So he should be playing every format. But anyway, so that's my sort of first thing, that I'm very excited for what lies ahead for Indian cricket, because a lot of players that should have been part of the setup have now made their way.
Yeah, and I think going back, as you said, the people were not really taking World Test Championship as seriously as they should have, especially England, because I just want to highlight this. Of course, we will talk more about Indian team here, but it's important to see the other side as well. And England, when they came on the shores, and they came winning in Sri Lanka with probably a much better team in Sri Lanka. The selection and the whole rotation thing was not in process as much as it was in India, because of course they rested Archer and Stokes over there. But here India was supposed to be the marquee series. That this is this is the tour which visiting teams crave for, and it's not just the India tour and the importance of it, but also the fact that even they had a stake at WTC, because they were not out of the race yet. So do you think that England probably had already thought that, okay, we can't really win in these conditions against this Indian team, so let's just do the rotation thing and take care of our players, or were probably they thought that okay, what's important this year? Is it the India series, or is it the Ashes, where we want the players to be more fresh?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think England have missed a real opportunity this year. And I understand why they have chosen to prioritize workload management and the mental well-being of players as well. They believe bubbles are challenging, so you can't have guys stay away from family months on end. And they do have cricket has a history of players that tend to break down mentally. So I think they deserve credit for wanting to prioritize that. I still think though that they've not found the balance right, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you're absolutely right. I don't know if they're going to rest players in an Ashes. I don't think they would. So I don't know why they wouldn't do that here, because this is the final frontier, right? Steve always called it that. And you could see that winning in India perhaps is the hardest thing now to do. India have managed to win back-to-back tours in Australia, which is a significant achievement. Teams do tend to get results in England. But this team under Virat Kohli has been absolutely dominant in Test cricket at home. And that is why, especially after they won the first test, I think they could have been a little more flexible. They did rest in Sri Lanka. They did rotate in Sri Lanka. Anderson and Broad played one test each. But I think they got a few things wrong tactically. One, that they said, let's put all our eggs in the pink ball test basket, because that's when we want to play Anderson, Broad together, or, all our big seamers together. Not thinking that after the 1-0 lead, they should have just played their best team and looked to take a 2-0 advantage. And as it turns out, Jimmy Anderson has played 3 out of the 4 tests, right? So you could have played him in the first 3 and rest him in the 4th. So he did not bowl a lot in the first test in Chennai, so that was a bit of an opportunity lost as well. So I just think there were things that didn't make sense. Moeen Ali was sent back after the second test. He didn't play the first, and he was sent back because he was supposed to play the white ball games, and he's not played a single T20I, right? So again, these are things. What have you sent him back for if you weren't going to play him there. Now I know that they've said that was not the plan, and they were forced by conditions to not play Moeen in the
Yeah,
T20Is. But that's the whole point of it, right? Moeen makes your test, walks into your test team in India.
of
He may
course.
or may not walk into your T20 team in India. So these were calls which I think England erred in. And I totally agree with the fact that they didn't take this series as seriously. I don't think that was what you asked me at the beginning was, did they think they're not going to win? I don't think that any team thinks that way. I do think they surprised everyone, maybe even themselves, with how well they played in the first
Yeah,
test. And that for me required a little hunger or desire. Look, we're 1-0 up. We have a great chance here to win 2-0. We have a great chance to win a series here, which no team has done since that
yeah,
last England team in 2012. And you can now think back of it, as you as me as cricket fans or the whole cricketing fraternity, we look back at 2012 as one of the greatest ever test series, period. It's
yeah,
not only about greatest, it is one of the greatest ever efforts by a visiting team, a non-Asian team in India
yeah.
or in the subcontinent. But it is also one of the great test series of the last 50 years. So, of the last 30 years, certainly. So, that's the sort of value an overseas win in India tends
Of
to
course.
gather over time. And I think England maybe in time will look back and think this is a big opportunity missed.
Yeah, I was listening to this podcast on BBC Test Match Special yesterday, and they had Ashley Giles on, and it was the Vaughan and Tougher show. So there, Ashley Giles was also asked by Michael Vaughan that
Yeah,
uh,
Michael Vaughan's been very critical of this, so I know.
absolutely. So he wanted the answer straight from the horse's mouth, and
Yeah.
Ashley Giles again highlighted the fact that the breaks which we had thought of for different players, they had been decided way before, not just when we
Yeah,
got to
and
the
I
India
totally
stage.
understand that. That's what I'm saying. And I know Ashley as well, and I know
Yeah,
he's a top guy to manage
yeah,
England cricket. He's got most things right, right? When he came into a difficult time to manage England cricket himself, when Andrew Strauss had to pull out for family reasons and things like that, they've done a wonderful job, and I totally compliment them for this. But
mm,
I just think again, it's the rigidity with which you
yeah,
said these plans are set in stone, and I don't think that's how sport can run, right? If you're playing I mean, Test cricket overseas is the equivalent of a major world event in other sports. It's like a European Championship or a FIFA World Cup. If
yeah,
you're going to, because cricket doesn't have so many marquee events, certainly not in
yeah,
Test cricket. So if you're going to look at a World Cup and say, right, we're not sure if our star player can survive these many games in these many days, so we will pre-decide so many
yeah,
breaks.
of course.
But if scenarios change, if you have to be a little flexible, all right, let's give this a shot. If he misses the last few done, it's like playing for the kill, right? And I
Yeah,
just think a few things were missed by England. I'm only critical of two real selections.
mm,
One, um, Jimmy Anderson not playing the second test, and he did end up playing 3 out of 4 anyway. They could have played him 1, 2, 3 and rested him in the fourth. And the second one being Moeen Ali, who was
what about
far too
what
important a
about
player.
what about Josh Butler?
The thing with Butler is he is not as important to the England Test team as he is to the white ball team. And his numbers tend to show that he's a world class player, I have no doubt. But Ben Foakes, I think, did a very steady job when he first came in. Then batting got really hard. So I don't think Josh Butler would have made as much of a difference in the England side going forward. And they're still good keepers.
Mm.
I'm still not
But
a fan of so many
my
changes.
my question is purely as a batsman because in Sri Lanka, Josh Butler finished the second innings of the second test, and even in the home series against Pakistan, if you remember. So in the
Yeah,
last 1 year, he has shown sort of
fair enough.
improvements in the red ball cricket
Fair
as a
enough.
batsman.
And I still think that England have a rich reserve of batsmen. I think Bairstow, Foakes, and Butler would walk into most test teams as keeper
Yeah,
batsmen. And I'm still maintaining while Butler is a very good batsman, Butler is a sensational white ball batsman, and Butler is a very good red ball batsman. So I don't think that was, but that illustrates my point further. If you were going to play Josh Butler for the first test and change him, that's one more change is anyway going to happen. And for what it's worth, we keep saying don't change a winning side, right? So
mm,
you were making a change with Butler. You then had pre-decided a change with Jimmy Anderson. You weren't quite sure of Dom Best, so you decided we're going to change him up and bring in Moeen Ali. So that
yeah,
became 3. I think they made 2 more in that game. Ollie
yeah,
Stone played. Archer had a bit of a niggle, is what I remember. So anyway, there were anyway enough changes coming, right?
yeah,
So all the more reasons stick with Anderson, stick with Moeen Ali should have started. So there were things that they got wrong.
mm,
And I just think a slightly more flexible approach to this
Mm.
series would have made sense. Like I said, I get the workload management bit,
Yeah.
and I think it's fair, but they did get a few selections wrong. They clearly misread the pitch in Ahmedabad in the ping ball test. They should not have gone all out pace.
Yeah.
And the biggest criticism that I have of this England team, regardless of workload management, is that they came to India for a 4-match test series and brought just 2 spinners, out of which they didn't have the confidence of playing one. If you're
Yeah.
sending Moeen Ali back, and then your only spin option is Jack Leach, when you've come to India, you can't come with one spin and say, I'm not sure of Dom Best. Does he give you
Yeah.
control? I
Yeah.
mean, he's your off spinner. Either you play him with confidence or you don't bring him to India. So that's, I think, the biggest criticism I have of England, that they shot them. They came in with a bit of with tying one hand behind their backs by just bringing one spinner. And as good as their pacers are, conditions were not conducive for them to be successful, especially in the third and fourth test.
Yeah, and now looking back at that first test, they won it, and now I want to talk about India here a bit because
Sure.
India lost that first game playing on a much flatter wicket without having much of an assistance for their own spinners and their own bowlers. So after that, of course, we saw a very drastic change in the pitches. So do you think that, of course, home advantage is everyone's right and they should suit themselves. But my point is, if India wants to be the best team in the world, especially in test matches now, having won in Australia, and now here you were playing at home and, a much more equal contest which England won. So do you think India were right to probably go to those sort of turners, or they should have persisted with those sort of flat pitches and then beaten England like they did in 2016?
Yeah, so that's a good point you make. What you say at the end, India beat England comfortably
Yeah.
on flat pitches in 2016.
Yeah.
India beat Australia in Australia on all kinds of pitches in this tour. Right? Brisbane was different to Sydney. Sydney was different to Melbourne. They in fact even lost 2 tosses. So you had India. This Indian team is good enough to win anywhere. I don't think it's actually as much about India asking for these pitches. I don't believe they're even that that sort of team anymore. They're not a team that can win only on turners. The biggest difference in the first test was the lack of impact of Shahbaz Nadeem and potentially what Akshar Patel could have provided. I actually think Akshar Patel was so good, he would very well have had a much bigger say in that first test. And we'll never know now, but I think that was the biggest difference, right? And India lost that test match because India didn't bowl well in the first innings, bowl well enough in testing conditions, and they also didn't bat well enough after that. Yes, it got more challenging to bat on, but I still believe that India lost that test not necessarily only because of a flat pitch. They could have also drawn that test, right? Sometimes when you don't have things going away, yes, it was a big toss to lose, but there is evidence to show that India don't rely necessarily on tosses to win test matches, right? And we saw that in Australia. So this team could have played differently, could have batted better. If you look back at some of the wickets that fell for India in the first test in Chennai to Dom Bess, some pretty awful deliveries, right? So there's a full toss. There was one that Pujara got unlucky, ricocheting off, leg caught. So I'm just saying that India could have played better and taken a draw out of that first game. The reason that they lost is because England batted superbly after winning the toss, which didn't happen subsequently in the series. And that Akshar Patel, who was the biggest wild card for me in that, he was ruled out on the eve of the first test, and he would have surely played ahead of Shahbaz Nadeem had he been fit. So I think that was the biggest problem. I do not buy into this thing that India asked for these pitches. I think there are a lot of people around Indian cricket that tend to think that this is what India would want, and curators tend to make pitches accordingly. I also firmly believe that it's in nobody's interest for a test match to end in 2 days. I think India's batsmen would not be happy with that kind of wicket either. So if I have to analyze all the pitches, the pitch that was not a good pitch was the third test, right? Because you had a puff of dust, spinning on the first 20 minutes of a test match, and that's not what you want. So that was not a good pitch. It was still the same pitch for both teams, so England should not have folded as poorly as they did. But that was the only bad pitch of the series. All the other pitches weren't great, but they were fine for Test cricket. So I mean, I don't buy this thing that India needs these sort of pitches. And India's already a world-beating side. They won in Australia. They were very good in South Africa 4 years back when they toured. They won. They lost 2-1 there. They missed opportunities in England. I think a scoreline of 4-1 doesn't reflect how well they played. And I'd be very curious to see how they play when they go back a little later this year. So India is
Yeah.
already a great test team. So I don't believe they need pitches to establish that.
Yeah, just on cue, there is a comment by Chris Gonsalves. He says India has been playing last 3 4 years in Australia due to hard bouncy wickets. Can we win against England, South Africa, New Zealand on seaming wickets where our batsmen struggle to
Yeah.
prove that India will dominate in next 10 years? So
Yeah,
yeah,
great question. Great question. South Africa was a great chance when they traveled in 2017, and
yeah,
that was a blunder on selections. They went a batsman light, if you remember,
yeah.
in Cape Town.
Rahane
They
was
took
dropped. Yeah,
Ajinkya Rahane, yeah. And Virat Kohli was asking the media back then, "You guys wanted Rahane out?" No, nobody wanted Rahane out. Everyone thought Rahane was damn good. He needs to play. But Virat Kohli went with Hardik Pandya as the seam bowling all rounder.
yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Hardik got. I was in Cape Town for that test.
Okay.
Hardik got 95 in the first innings, and he ended up playing the whole series. I think that was a bit of
Yeah.
a that didn't do India a favor because
Yeah.
it kept Kohli's faith in Hardik for
Yeah.
the rest of the tour.
Yeah,
Understandably,
yeah,
what India needed was an extra batsman. And
yeah,
maybe they were still lost, but my point is always give yourself the best possible chance to win. And that didn't happen with selection. Eventually, India's batsmen batted a lot better on more challenging surfaces. Johannesburg was a difficult pitch. And the reason that they got better was because they'd spent more time in South Africa and they went to South Africa with no tour games. That was the other issue, right? This time also, when they went to Australia, they played the white ball leg first. They played two tour warm up games, one with the pink ball. And you could see the difference. By the time we reached test 2, 3, 4, India's batting had significantly improved. It also called for
yeah,
better personnel. Shubman Gill was outstanding. So that was, a big plus point for India. And that for me again is it's an age old way of how to win test matches. Go with preparation, go to New Zealand, play 2 or 3 tour games. That didn't happen when India went last time before the lockdown last year. So if they are to win in England, if they are to win in South Africa and in New Zealand, which I think are the 3 areas that Virat Kohli's team needs to conquer still, that's what they need to do. They need to get enough practice when they go there. I actually think this team will be a lot better in England this year. Kohli
yeah,
was remarkable in 2018. In
yeah,
2014, he couldn't buy a run, and he went back in 2018 a completely transformed batsman. I see a lot of that possibly repeating when India go again. Pujara got 100 in 2018 in Southampton. He could very well have a bigger series when he goes. He had a quiet series at home. He had a quiet series in Australia by his standards.
yeah,
So I can totally see India batting a lot better in England when they go this time. Shubman Gill excites me very much. Rishabh Pant as your starter keeper batsman could be a massive game changer. So there are a lot of things that are worth looking forward to. And I have no doubt if they give themselves enough prep time, which they will now because they're going to be playing the World Test Championship in
yeah,
June. I think the tour is a lot later, but they'll have
yeah,
some red ball cricket, I'm sure, before the
yeah.
first test. So that's the way to win overseas. That's how it's been proven in the past. So give yourselves a good chance, pick the right teams, and no stopping you.
Yeah. Yeah, and now moving on from test matches, when the T20s came, so I know, and a lot of people would agree that, before the series started, probably India had more questions than England because England looked a much better side and much tighter unit in white ball on paper also. And also they had the full strength team, compared to the test team. This time they were full strength because they again, Michael Vaughan has been critical of the fact that why Owen Morgan is getting his full strength team and not Joe Root. So when this series started, were you expecting 3-2 in favor of India or a series win for India? Because honestly, I was not expecting India to win the series because we were without Bumrah, Jadeja, Shami, and Kohli said that our first choice openers are Rahul and Rohit, but they started with Dhawan. So I didn't have much confidence when the series started, especially after losing the first one. So you expected the way India came back, or was it England which probably didn't do that well?
Yeah, they started with Dhawan because Rohit was he took leave for the
Rested.
first game, so whatever, something happened there.
Yeah.
And no, you're right. I'm with you. I think the T20I series win was the biggest surprise for me, pleasant surprise. I'm not saying India were they've caused an upset because India are still a really good white ball team. What was remarkable was the fact that they did it in spite of losing tosses, which is not easy against this side. And they also like I said, this worked well for them in a way that injuries meant that Ishan Kishan and Surya Kumar Yadav were effectively, if Ishan Kishan, of course, played that 50 in a game which India should have won anyway. They won the toss in that game, and they should have chased that regardless. But it just, I think, galvanized the whole team. right? And it forced everyone to play a little differently.
Yeah.
And they brought with them a championship winning mentality that they've now gotten used to with the Mumbai Indians.
Yeah.
And Surya Kumar Yadav is just, oh God, I've been waiting for so long for Surya Kumar Yadav to play T20I cricket for India. I think he's good enough to play ODI cricket as well. But T20I cricket, my God, if there was anyone who was overcooked for international cricket, it was Surya. Because in the IPL, a lot of guys do well, but the IPL is still a domestic tournament, right? It still involves enough Indian bowlers that
Yeah.
batsmen with considerable experience and limited ability also can succeed in, because you can pick your part-time Indian
Yeah. Yeah.
domestic, you can take him on. Every team has at least two of those, if not more. But Surya Yadav has been hitting world-class bowlers in the IPL for about 3 years now, right?
Yeah.
He's been taking on the Archers and the Cummins and the overseas fast bowlers, the Chris Morrises of the IPLs for a while now. So that for me was the biggest example. He's played Rashid Khan really well. So that for me has been the biggest example of a player ready for the international level. So thank God he came in. And as far as how India have gone, yeah, I think for me that's the biggest takeaway, that they played a better team, uh, and the fact that they are now going to revisit what they already know in T20 cricket. You
Yeah.
said Kohli, and Kohli did say this, that Rohit and Rahul are my first choice openers. I agree with that. Before the series, KL Rahul for me, before this T20I series, was India's best T20 batsman. He
Yeah.
still is now. I wouldn't want to say one series has changed that. But T20 is one thing we've learned from this series, and what we should apply, in my view, before the T20 World Cup is T20 cricket is about form and fitness. That's
Yeah.
it. Whoever's in form and whoever's fit plays. So my humble submission would be, yes, Rohit and Kohli, Rohit and Rahul are your first choice openers, but even that isn't set in stone. Because if that means Ishan Kishan is going to be out, and if Ishan Kishan is hotter at that time, if he's in the sort of striking form that Rohit may not be, that Rahul may be, and if Rahul has a below average IPL, and I'm sure they'll play some cricket before the T20 World Cup, let's say Rahul looks out of sorts, then you're not going to start a T20 World Cup hoping he'll find his form there.
Yeah.
Whoever is red hot at the moment needs to play. So for me, everyone's fair game now. If Virat Kohli has decided after that last T20I that me and Rohit Sharma opening is the way to go, then that's what you look at. Suddenly, Rohit and Rahul is not first choice. So Virat Kohli himself has almost acknowledged that.
Yeah.
So T20 is so flexible, it's so volatile. It's
Yeah.
all about figuring who's hitting it well, in those last few games. And we've seen that in IPL finals. There are teams that make changes and they tend to pay off because you're backing players in form, right? And that's just what T20 has taught us. So for me, that's what I'm curious to see. What does India do with this rich wealth of reserves? I don't believe Shreyas Iyer at 6, as well as he played, is a long-term solution.
Yeah.
And I hope he recovers, and I hope he's back in time for the World Cup. It's a really unfortunate injury, but I think this team needs to identify who fits in at what role, and if they can do that, they will be world beaters.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were talking about how India got more answers as the series got over, and on the other hand, I think England sort of found more questions because
Make no mistake, Keshav, India have a lot of questions as well. Once everyone's fit and available, I don't know who they're going to play.
But they are good headaches, right? They are at least good headaches.
I don't think so. Sometimes I don't think they are. Sometimes I think when Shreyas Iyer is injured, you bring in Rishabh Pant to the ODI game and he smashes it. That's great, right? Because you're not going to drop Shreyas Iyer otherwise.
Yeah.
And because he's not done anything wrong, right? Manish Pandey, a lot of people tend to argue Manish Pandey's case, and I sympathize. Manish Pandey has done nothing wrong to be suddenly missing from the ODI scheme of things. But with due respect to Manish, there are better players. That's just how this team is. Michael Hussey did not debut for Australia because there were too many better players than him.
Yeah.
Brad Hodge ended up playing very limited international cricket in spite of being this first-class monster that he was, because that team just couldn't get through to it, right? So you have to acknowledge that is the standard set by a champion side. The reason Amol Majumdar did not play Test cricket for India was because who was going to displace Lakshman or Dravid or Tendulkar or even Saurav at that matter for a long time from the Test team? Nobody. So you have to acknowledge that this is how good this Indian team is. And if Shreyas Iyer needs to wait, if Manish Pandey needs to wait, because Surya Kumar Yadav, Ishan Kishan, Rishabh Pant. These guys are far more dynamic T20 players. If that is the pecking order, then so be it. That's what I mean by ruthless selections. Shikhar Dhawan does not make the T20I team. I think that's been clear for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah,
Yet, when Rohit chose to opt out of the first two games, Kohli went to him. I think that was poor because you know what you're going to get out of Shikhar Dhawan.
yeah,
Tomorrow, if everybody fails, you can always say, Shikhar, come in. You are a reliable T20 opener. But that doesn't happen in Indian cricket.
yeah.
So I'm happy for whatever reason that Ishan Kishan came in after one game and added that little adrenaline pump. It was inexplicable after that he batted at three and all of that. But anyway, so that all that later. So I just think they have a lot of questions still, and I do not know how they'll find the answers to that. So, and now you can
Yeah.
come back to your sorry, yeah.
Yeah, my question was until third T20, people were thinking that it's win the toss, bowl first, and win the match. But India sort of changed that with the last two T20s. So that maybe I think maybe highlighted a few grey areas in England's team that how they were looking at the start, especially in the first three games, how they were looking much more stronger than India. Maybe it faded away with time, or they didn't. They maybe they missed the form of Morgan because, of course, a captain's performance mirrors the team's performance. Even when Morgan got out of ODIs, even Butler couldn't perform much as a captain. So was it the bad form of Morgan, or maybe failure of David Malan in these conditions because he's just not experienced?
Malan played really well in the last game. I think he took a little while to get used to it. I mean, this England team, make no mistake, is a magnificent white ball side. They are effectively single-handedly forcing the entire world to play one-day cricket differently.
Yeah.
Right? And they've done that to India as well from the evidence of the last game. So they will win a lot more than they will lose. There are not so many things wrong with them. I think they got outplayed in the last T20I because Kohli and Rohit started so well, and it was finished off by India's order. So I just think they were two good teams and one just happened to win on the night. So I don't think there's anything majorly wrong with this England side. I don't think they're missing any major personnel. Their problem has been a bit with their death bowling, and in this particular series, I think they also have been guilty of not having a plan B. They saw that pace is really working, and India are rattled by the pace of Wood and Archer. But the minute India got better at that, which happened over time, Kohli and Rohit, these guys are not worried by pace, right?
Yeah.
They might have struggled in the first couple of games, but the pitches started changing their shape a little, and they got a lot better playing Archer and Wood as the series got deeper. So you can't go one plan only against great players. So and against strong teams. And you saw that with India as well. India changed it up and decided to bowl differently, to play slightly different teams as well. So for me, they decided to change Yuzvendra Chahal, bring in Rahul Chahar, try a different type of leg spinner. You've got to be a little more flexible. And I think in England, having come here with limited squad members anyway would have been a challenge. So I don't think there's a lot wrong. And cometh the World Cup, I do not see Owen Morgan being an out of form player. I mean, you need to win one game, and that's the hardest place to bat. At 5-6, when you need to sort of take off immediately, that's the hardest place in T20 cricket to bat in. So I don't think there's a lot wrong. India, and that's reflected in the scoreline, right? It was a really close series. Eventually, India won it 3-2, and that's just about it. I don't think England are a bad team at all.
Yeah, of course, they're not bad team. The only thing which I was concerned about, like a couple of things actually. First of all, they were batting Stokes a bit too low in the T20s because
that I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, the kind of player, the caliber he has, number 6 is too low for him. Even if you see Indian team, same goes for Hardik Pandya. At 7, it was too low for him as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so and again, then England going with just one spinner throughout the T20 series. They didn't play Moeen Ali at all, and then until the 4th game, I was concerned about David Malan's form because he is not experienced in these conditions. Somebody like an Alex Hales is sitting out because David Malan has done so well, and that's even Joe Root for to some extent. So I think England should be able to decode these little problems by the time World Cup comes.
I'm sure England will be fine. Yeah.
And now as you said in the last T20 when Kohli started opening, and it was kind of a butterfly effect or a ripple effect of the fact that how the guys like Surya Kumar and Ishan Kishan played. Uh, the moment they got their chances, they grabbed it with both hands. So, do you think that that sort of changed approach India should have applied in the ODIs as well? Yes, last ODI they did that, but in the first two games they were again the same old conservative India, the outdated brand of cricket especially ODI cricket. Now they need to take a leaf out of England's blueprint and apply that in ODIs as well.
Yeah, I think the fact that they approached the third ODI differently was clear evidence that they themselves admit maybe a different style is required. Now let's make no mistake. You can still win games playing the way India do, right?
Yeah.
In the first ODI, they won the first ODI playing their typical brand of cricket. Where they allowed for one anchor to sort of take charge and then go hard.
Sorry to cut you, but don't you think that game was actually more than India winning? It was in England losing it because of the collapse that happened after.
Absolutely, you're right. And here's the thing that when India are a full strength bowling side, they may win a lot of games getting 310, 315. We also did see towards the end of the 2019 World Cup that we weren't looking at 340 chasing 335 or 350 chasing 340. They did become games of 240, 250. The New Zealand-India semi-final, you all of a sudden have reached a trickier surface. So let's make no mistake. That ODI cricket is not one-dimensional. However, there is every chance that you need to be able to play this game if the opposition is England and if the pitch is the kind that you saw at Pune, where it doesn't turn with a significant advantage batting second, and England are the powerhouse that they are. So that for me is the big takeaway, that ODI cricket is also not one plan, one team. It has to be different. You have to assess conditions and you have to approach them differently. And what we saw in the third ODI, and it was an excellent observation that was pointed out by Ian Bell when we were covering it, that India went hard, they lost their way a little, they lost wickets towards the end, and yet they've ended up with 320, right? Yeah. So even that approach is the kind of approach where if you're going at 7 and over for 40 overs, you already hit 260, 280, right? Or 6.5, 7 and over. Then even if you have a collapse, you'll get 40 with your tail, wagging a little bit also, even not playing sensationally. So you're still getting the same kind of runs that you got playing the first way. But here, you have the potential to get 350. Had Pant and Pandya batted a little more and their wickets were against the run of play in the ODI, India getting 350, 360 that day. Yeah. And that effectively does, outbat the opposition out of the game. So the downside of this approach is a lot lesser because in the first ODI, with that approach, the max you're going to get to is 320 because you've given yourself a platform, you've got 240 overs, and when you've gone berserk, you get 120 in the last 10. Here, if you've got 240, by just going a little harder, it's not like you have to go significantly differently. You saw how easily Dhawan can score at 100 strike rate in ODIs. You saw how easily Rohit Sharma can do it, right? Virat Kohli can do it. KL Rahul should be able to do it as well if he's, feeling in a good place in his game. So whoever comes in, if they can continue going at 6 and over on a flat pitch, England have shown how easy that is. You can get a boundary and over comfortably if you just target the right bowlers, and on a flat pitch if you have the batsmen that are good enough to. So that for me is an acknowledgement by India, the way they played in the third ODI, that we have to give ourselves the best possible chance to win. And that for me will again be dependent on the opposition. And when you play a team like England, that's how you play them. When you play the West Indies in a T20 World Cup game on a flat pitch, that's how you play, right? If it's more challenging, if you're going to play a different sort of team, you can always try and reassess. Yeah. But the power game in ODI cricket is very much here to stay, especially when you play against England.
Yeah, and it's a testament of the fact that, the two teams, the name of two teams that you took, West Indies and England, both are the World Cup winners. If you see, England has won the last ODI World Cup and West Indies has won the last T20 World Cup. And it's because of probably the brand of cricket they play in those formats. And India, of course, has to take a leaf out of their book now. It's also, I was having this chat the other day on my channel with some other journalist, and I put up the same question. So he was of the other opinion. He said, why change it if this blueprint has worked for India, this approach that takes them to 320, 330, and this right now you're winning without your Bumrahs and Jadejas and Shamis. So once they come in, as you said, this approach could still work for India. But with time, you have to update and upgrade to compete with other teams which are
Yeah,
playing.
and make no mistake, India are not winning as much as they should in ODI cricket.
Yeah,
And if they come up against a team like England in a semi-final or a final of the World Cup, they have to play this way.
yeah,
Even if it means if they're on a flat pitch, England still, England are still capable of playing both games, right? They
yeah,
did end up facing a much smaller score against New Zealand, but if they would have faced a flatter surface, they could have easily gotten 320 and 330 and won a World Cup final. So you have to give yourself the best possible chance. And what people need to remember is this Indian team has the personnel. A lot of teams do not have the players that
yeah,
can play this way, that
yeah,
can play. West Indies cannot replicate their T20 style to 50 over
yeah,
cricket because they don't have the batsmen that can play that long, right?
yeah,
There's a reason an Andre Russell or a Kyron Pollard's still a lot better these days, but they don't have the same impact in ODI cricket that they do in T20 cricket.
hmm,
And India have players of higher caliber when it comes to playing ODI cricket. So those guys, Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, even Virat Kohli, can do what they do in T20 cricket and ODI cricket. A lot of
yeah,
guys can't do.
yeah. Uh, I think there is some technical problem with the um, Raunak, and I hope that he rectifies it and comes back soon. Sorry, guys, if you were here for listening to Raunak, but I'm sure he will be back soon. So yeah, as I was talking, as we were talking, in fact, that the fact that India has all the potential resources to play the way England does and to do what England has been doing on the field for so long now, 5-6 years, since the 2015 World Cup. So India definitely has the resources, and we can also probably now change the way we play cricket, because teams like England, Australia, New Zealand, I think they play ODIs as an extended T20, and that's what India needs to do, because in the last T20 we saw how the Indian team changed their whole approach going into T20s, and I think same needs to be applied into ODIs as well. And we saw some sort of example of that in the final ODI when even after going 4 down on 150 during the halfway stage, we still ended up with 329 because of the way Hardik and Rishabh Pant played. So yeah, Raunak is messaging me now. He will be back in a couple of seconds. So yeah, just he'll be back and we'll just wrap it up. Just a couple of things remaining. Thank you, Chris, for sending your comments. And I'll just pick one of the comments. One thing which we cannot give as an excuse is fielding, considering lockdown, why Indian fielding is getting worse series by series. So once Raunak is back, I'll definitely put this question for him. And then, of course, there's other comments as well. So we'll take that. Just in a second, I think Raunak should be able to join us back again. And so he says his power tripped and he'll reconnect once the Wi-Fi is back. But anyway, these things happen all the time, so it's okay. I'll take another comment as well. Butler is a very decent batsman, but his keeping skills are always questioned. Yes, I agree with you, but I think based on purely as a batsman, he can still get a chance in the test team, even with folks keeping. Butler is a good enough batsman to retain his place in the test matches. Then there's another comment. If you have a pick between Jadeja and Hardik in World Test Championship final, who will you bank on? Raunak sir? So Raunak sir will come back and answer. I think India can afford to play both of them if need be, because if you want to go with two spinners, because it's gonna happen in Southampton, so you can go with Ashwin and Jadeja both, and Hardik can be your third seamer with Bumrah and Shami your as your two seamers.
The power trip. I think I'm talking too much. Yeah.
Yeah, these things keep happening. So this is a comment for you. If you have to pick between Jadeja and Hardik in WTC final, whom will you bank upon, Raunak sir?
Okay, wow, good question. Ooh, if Hardik Pandya is bowling, I think it's a condition-specific call. To be honest, um, I actually really am excited with the prospect of your top five tend to pick themselves with Rishabh Pant at
Yeah,
six. So you've got Rohit and Shubman, Pujara, Kohli, Rahane, and Rishabh Pant at six. I would play Ashwin and Jadeja because I just think it gives you depth. I'm very tempted with the prospect of actually playing Hardik as well. So you
yeah,
have Ashwin batting till after number nine, and then your two best seamers, which in that case would be Bumrah and Ishant. So you're playing five bowlers. So I actually am quite tempted to play all three because if it's Southampton, we see a wicket that is assisting the spinners a little. You've got two spinners if it turns, and Hardik Pandya, if he's capable of bowling, 15 overs a day
mm,
by then I think that becomes a really exciting prospect. The only place in the world he could play as a third seamer is England, right?
yeah,
Otherwise, wherever you go, you're playing him as your fourth bowler. So I am quite excited with the prospect of playing a really deep batting because
mm,
it could very well be these sort of lower order runs that make the difference in a close one-off test match. I mean, it's a
yeah,
one-off test, right? So I would like a little bit of insurance with the batting because you never know if India again, like I said in the first test of what would be the first test of playing in England, because it's
yeah,
not like you've got a lot of cricket before that in those conditions. So I don't rule out the possibility of actually having all three of them play in that game, but
yeah.
I would definitely want India to have five bowling options.
Yeah,
So
and before you joined, when I was answering this, even I said India can play both Jadeja and Hardik. But for me, the two seamers were Bumrah and Shami, and you said Bumrah and Ishant. So you won't go with Shami.
yeah, I would go with Ishant for the sheer experience of having played in England, of him being better to left-handers. Uh, I mean, it's a tough one, but Bumrah and Shami are also very similar type of bowlers. Uh, and quite frankly, this could be a selection call which, if it's taken away from Kohli's hands, he'd be very happy about it. If Ishant is a niggle and Shami is fully fit, then Bumrah and Shami it is. So it's a really tough one, but I would still play Ishant Sharma ahead of Shami for a one-off. I mean, I like the idea. The more I think about it, I don't think Shami and Bumrah is a bad idea at all.
Hmm.
I just think Ishant is a different type of bowler in England, gives you a little more variety than Mohammad Shami does.
Yeah, and New Zealand has a few left-hander batsmen as well. Just since we are on this topic, do you think New Zealand going into the World Test Championship final might have a little advantage because they would have played those two tests against England before the?
100%. Anyway, they are batsmen that are better against the moving ball than India are. That's
Yeah,
where they play. So there is no doubt in my mind that New Zealand would go into that game as favourites. The fact that they play two tests in England against England before that is almost unfair. To think
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
you're
And you
playing a
know
World
what?
Test Championship
What
final.
what what really irks me even more is these two test matches are not a part of WTC cycle. Just like they played a series in 2019, again those two tests were also not a part of that. So
I, I I think
what's the sense?
the learnings for the ICC from this is, in my opinion, there shouldn't be a one-off Test Championship final. There should be a three-match Test series to decide a winner, because that's how Test cricket is played everywhere. So I think the beauty of, imagine how many tests or Test series stories would have been different if they ended after one test, right? Whether
Yeah,
it's Australia right now, whether it's
yeah,
England and India right now, whether it's 2001, the most epic series that we've had
yeah,
at home, whether it's the Ashes of 2005. I just think the obsession of a one-off final is not necessarily relevant in Test cricket.
yeah.
So I would much rather provide the same feeling or the same
Mhm.
taste of Test cricket as you would in a tour, which is the World Test Championship final is a series of three, and then
Mhm.
whoever wins wins. You can even have the
Yeah,
third one. Yeah. So if
or,
there's someone
or,
wins
or
the first two, you could cancel the third, like in tennis. But I just
yeah,
think
or
that's
it's kind of like the olden days of Commonwealth Bank series when India used to,
a best
Australia
of
used
three
to
finals. Yeah, a
play.
best of three finals.
Yeah,
No problem with that. If someone wins the first two, then the third
yeah,
one is off.
But
So that
I still don't get the sense of these England New Zealand matches out of WTC cycle. Why the hell are they playing these?
yeah, they're playing because the boards have committed to a certain number of engagements with each other. So bilateral cricket will always go on outside of the cycle. That's because we don't have a perfect schedule for the World Test
Yeah.
Championship. The day we do, where everyone is playing everyone home and away the same number of times, then you won't need this. But until that happens, you will have to have boards at liberty to feed their broadcast interests. They need certain number of days to offer the broadcaster who's picked up cricket for good money, and that will have to be against a certain quality of opposition as well. So those are the sort of dynamics that dictate cricket. So you can't argue with them right now. I think it's an unfortunate coincidence that New Zealand have ended up in the final. If it were
Yeah.
Australia, or some other team, then it would have been fair to both. But as it turns out,
Just on that, do you think New Zealand were the worthy finalists? Because if
I,
you see
I
the
don't
whole
know
cycle,
anybody. Yeah, but I don't. This was a very weird year, right?
yeah,
The fact that the whole system changed because of COVID. I mean, so many series were cancelled. It was an imperfect model to start with. The fact that a two-test series holds the same weightage as a five-test series,
yeah,
right, in itself is something which is up for debate. So I give
yeah,
ICC credit because they
but
found a way to start this. They should have done it a long time back, but
yeah.
I don't think this should be held against or for anybody. So
Yeah, I mean, even with the series that got cancelled, like I think New Zealand's only tour that was cancelled was Bangladesh, and apart from that, they won just one away test in Sri Lanka, lost 3-0 in Australia. So if you compare that with an England side, which won in South Africa, won in Sri Lanka, won against the same oppositions at home, which New Zealand did, West Indies and Pakistan. So that way, I just thought that were New Zealand worthy of that final, or maybe they were lucky because of the percentage system.
yeah, I guess. I mean, uh, to be honest, like I said, this New Zealand team is a really good test team, uh, and there's not much that separates it from England. Would have made it third or Australia fourth, right? And I think Australia, had they gone to South Africa, the equation may have changed had they had a chance to win there. And as far as England go, I mean, I'm very disappointed with England not showing the appetite to win a series in India. So I don't think you could say that they deserve to be there more than New Zealand. So I guess everyone to a degree lucks out with your fixtures. At the end of the day, if you have to offer India four tests against England at home to
Yeah.
make it to the World Test Championship final, they would have happily taken that, right? They would have banked on even getting a 4-0, like they did last time when England came here in five tests. So I don't think there's a lot to read into it. I think it'll be two really good teams. I'm happy in a way that you're going to have two neutral teams at least play in England, as against
Yeah,
England against
yeah, that's true.
India. So I think that's a small victory for it, and it's the start of something. It's not perfect, but it'll be the start of something. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, so I think we are almost at the end of the show. Just before we wrap up India England, I think the only negative which I still think is actually of some concern is probably our wrist spinners now. Because Kuldeep
Yeah.
Yadav, the way he has gone down in the last couple of years since the 2019 World Cup, especially, I just fear that Yuzvendra Chahal is also not going that way now, because you might not, you never know, because in World Cup you might go back to your finger spinners, because Jadeja of course will come back. Washington has been doing better than Kuldeep and Chahal in the recent past, and you might recall Ashwin. So the whole wrist spin and middle over wickets might go into the can very quickly now.
Okay, interesting. Now I have a slightly sort of different take on this. I think it's important for this team to understand who makes them a stronger team and who doesn't. And I think it would be a folly to go back to finger spin, because there was a reason we reached here in the first place. That India decided after the ICC Champions Trophy in 2017 that finger spinners are not giving you wickets in the middle overs, nor are they being able to contain. So I would rather try something else. They went with what was supposed to be a hugely inviting and almost a seductive option of two wrist spinners in the middle. And Chahal and Kuldeep are phenomenal for them. I still believe that India deserted that theory too easily. It was against England in the World Cup game at Edgbaston where they got taken apart and they just got outplayed by a really good England side. Not to mention, I remember that game very vividly. If you go to Kuldeep Yadav in that 10 over spell, Bairstow and Roy went mad, right?
Yeah.
And Kuldeep went for 44 or 46 of his first 4 overs. He then got Jason Roy when Jadeja took that terrific catch as a substitute at long on. And his next 6 overs, he went for about 25, right after he got that wicket. So he's gone for 80 on the day or 75 on the day, but he's gotten you that wicket. And after that game, for some reason, Kohli decided to change the complete balance of the side. It was one bad game against a team that outplayed you. It was fine. India went to Jadeja, they went to Dinesh Karthik, they changed the entire balance of the team, and they've never quite gone back to that team since. So, in my view, they still deserted that too early. Now, as a result of not showing confidence in Kuldeep Yadav, that has also somewhat translated into Kuldeep Yadav just becoming a less impactful bowler. He is the kind of bowler that needs a lot more backing. I think that's just something that I'm getting a reading of from afar. And the fact that his franchise haven't backed him as well in the IPL for the last 2 years hasn't helped. So for me, Kuldeep Yadav unfortunately has had a bit of a, it's a chicken or the egg story. If he was backed more, would he have been a better bowler? Or should he be bowling better in order to be backed more? I don't know, right? I'm lost for it. The fact remains that in the games that we saw recently, while he didn't bowl badly, I don't think he bowled well enough either. So I sympathize for Kuldeep Yadav, but I do not believe the way to go is going back to finger spin. I don't believe Ashwin makes a bigger difference in ODI cricket, with due respect to how good a bowler he is.
What about T20?
I still rate Washington Sundar as a better T20 bowler than Ashwin. And the only other thing I would say is that while Ashwin is a very good T20 bowler, I think it's important in T20 cricket to be able to have multiple attributes to contribute with. So if you don't become that 4-over bowler on that day, if you're only going to bowl 1 over and say someone takes you apart, bowl a second, you're going. I still think Ashwin doesn't offer you that second skill set as a batter, and you can only play one of Ashwin and Washington Sundar. If you need 17 of 6, right, or 18 of 9, Ashwin is not the guy to get that for you in T20s, even though he's a very capable batsman in Test cricket. So I just think, and then there's the fielding angle. I don't think Washington is a lot better than him either. I think he can work on his fitness. But I still think Washington Sundar gives you a little more in T20 cricket than Ashwin does. Having said that, that is the strongest case to play him for Ashwin. If you are playing against two left-hand batsmen at the top, I don't know which team at the top of my head, I can't think of one. But I think you still have Washington Sundar for that job. And Ashwin in ODI cricket, for me, does not again guarantee you 10 overs. On a flat pitch, if you're bowling in the subcontinent in the second half with dew, I do not see why you would bowl Ashwin, why he's a better option than Chahal or Kuldeep. So I think that's something for India to figure. What it's told me also is that Chahal and Kuldeep cannot take their place for granted anymore, but that there could be other wrist spinners who could show up, right? If Rahul Chahar is not a 10-over bowler yet, but I would love to see this as an opportunity for anybody else who makes an impact in List A cricket, in Vijay Hazare, whether that's a Ravi Bishnoi, whether it's Murugan Ashwin, whether it's other wrist spinners who can stick. If Varun Chakravarti can develop into a 10-over bowler, who knows? So that is for me the learning that there's a position, there's an opening for a wicket-taking spinner if he makes it, and if he doesn't make it, then conversely there is an opening for India to go all out on seam and play Jadeja as your 5-6 over bowler, on a good day 10-over bowler. So if you want to play Bumrah and you want to play Shami and you want to play Bhuvaneshwar Kumar because he's come back with such terrific form, then you can also consider Shardul Thakur ahead of a wrist spinner because Shardul Thakur has the X factor of getting you wickets. So that's what this series has shown, that you can play without a specialist spinner, which is what India did in the third game. And that's only because you've got good enough seamers. So for me, it could very well mean that India reach a place where you play your best bowlers regardless of conditions. So if you don't know what you're going to get, that is a really good selection in the third ODI where they picked Natarajan ahead of the wrist spinner for Kuldeep because they thought if they lose the toss, that's a better option. And that was absolutely right. It was sound. Now, if they won the toss, you would have liked to have a wrist spinner bowling in the afternoon. But I think it's a judgment call that Kohli made. And looking at his toss record, I don't blame him. So for me, that's the takeaway here, that A, the wrist spinner slot is open. Who wants it? Bowl well in the next 2 or 3 years. There's plenty of time before the 2023 World Cup. Who knows who could become an option? And option two, you could well play without a wrist spinner if you don't have someone who outranks Bhuvaneshwar, Bumrah, Shami, and Shardul. And I think that's a really good four at the moment because they're
Yeah.
different bowlers. They are safer bowlers, you'd think. When it comes to conditions, even if it gets wet, even if there's dew, they will give you more than a spinner would, who would be dependent on conditions. But I do not believe we should be going back to finger spin because there is no evidence to suggest that that is a more attacking option or a more defensive option in ODI cricket.
Yeah, and my whole question was based upon the fact that since the first assignment will be a T20 World Cup in 6 months' time, and if you want to play Bumrah, Shami, and Bhuvneshwar together, or Bumrah, Shami, or Bumrah, Bhuvneshwar, and Natarajan maybe, then you need your two spinners to be batting a bit. You cannot have Kuldeep and Chahal both together because
100%.
they cannot bat. So that way, if we go with Washington and Jadeja, so that means going with finger spinners rather than wrist spinners. So that
Yeah.
was my point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that I agree with. In fact, I think it's a huge advantage for everyone to be able to bat. And the only one who is exceptional enough to command his place on one skill is Bumrah.
Bumrah, yeah.
Right? So if Shardul Thakur is preferred over Shami, I wouldn't see that as a bad thing because Shami can also go for runs on his day. Any bowler can, but Shami has the propensity to go for runs. But Shardul can give you something with the bat if you need to tonk a few in the last over to win a game. So that's something that I think the team needs to learn, and I hope more and more players work on those skills because that one hit could be the difference. So yeah, I agree with you. You need at this point, India's two finger spinners stake a stronger claim to make the T20 side than India's wrist spin.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we end this, Suman has asked your favorite batting, knock, and bowling spell of this Indian season.
Easy. Rishabh Pant in the fourth test at Chennai was just remarkable because he played a proper test innings and it was still blockbuster entertainment, which is so hard. He didn't go crazy. He wasn't smashing it around. He wasn't giving you edge of the seat stuff. He eased his way into it, defended well, left well, ran well. And when he just wanted to whack it, he just whacked it. And that reverse flick of Jimmy Anderson was just incredible, wasn't it? So that for me is the standout test innings of this summer. Standout bowling spell. Okay, that's tricky, but I'll give you a cumulative effort. I thought Bhuvaneshwar Kumar through the course of the T20Is was excellent for a guy coming back from injury and playing regularly, playing all the ODIs and the T20s, and the fact that he is bowling as well as he ever has, which I thought would be a challenge for someone like Bhuvi. I thought if even if he comes back, he's not going to be the same bowler, but he looked terrific on days where other guys are going at 9s and 8s. He's going at 4s. So I thought Bhuvaneshwar was the standout bowler of the white ball league.
He has answered his own question as well. So he's including Australian tour as well. So he says, yeah. So if you had to include Australian tour, would you change your answer or would you stick to the same?
Good question. I think Rahane at Melbourne was still a bigger innings, more important innings because of what India went into that test with. And there was a massive innings for Ajinkya Rahane personally also and for the team. So I still rank that as at above the others. As far as bowling goes, I think I'll lean towards Siraj. Just again with the lack of Bumrah and the other senior players all missing, no Ishant Sharma, no Shami. So someone had to suddenly become leader of the pack, and Siraj had to assume that role, and he almost always delivered with the wicket of David Warner. So I'm going to go with Siraj. Yeah, I'm happy with that. But I'd go Rahane as the best innings, as good as Pant's innings was. I just think that was a really important innings to change the momentum of the series.
Yeah, I think if we talk just about the white ball leg of the India-England series, for me, the man of that white ball series was Bhuvaneshwar, as you pointed out, because there were never any questions about his skill. The hype was all about his comeback from injury and how he would be able to get back to his best, and of course he showed that. And man of the season for me has to be Pant, because if you see across the formats, both the tours, then you don't have to look too far ahead.
I mean,
there you have it.
Yeah. Pant is Nitin Menon, which I tweeted about. So
yes, of course. Yeah, I had to actually talk about it. It slipped off my mind, but yeah, we should have a special mention for him.
Outstanding. this could be India's best umpire ever. He has the potential to. I hope he doesn't fall away. But for
Yeah,
people who care about these things, it's always nice to have a really, there are iconic umpires have always been part of cricketing folklore, cricketing history. So
yeah,
whether it's a Shepherd or a Taufel or a Buckner or a,
yeah,
Alim Dar or whoever it may be, you tend
yeah.
to recollect with a lot of significance to the storytelling of cricket. So why not have another Indian there?
Yeah, and it's so ironic that somebody on field has been so good, and on the other hand, somebody sitting in all the air conditions and so many cameras and technology giving wrong decisions one by one. If you remember the Stokes run out or the Malan catch,
There were a lot of India. Menon is miles ahead of all his counterparts at the
yeah,
moment. So that's not a technology thing. I've said this for a while. More reviews, more camera angles are not going to remove the errors. Better umpires will. You need
yeah.
better guys to look at those pictures and know that's a clean catch, or no, that's on the line, that's out. So unless you don't have guys who are competent enough to see it, you'll
Yeah.
always have these errors.
Yeah, absolutely. Decisiveness is, I think, what they need more than anything. So there you have it. I think we have almost covered most of the facets of this Indian season. Ronak, before we end this, was there anything that I probably didn't ask apart from, of course, the Menon umpiring? But
Oh,
other
I
than
think
that, anything?
you've covered everything, man. So well done to you. Uh, I think we've spent time on pretty much everyone who deserves time from this summer. I'd make a
Yeah,
mention to Akshat Patel, who bowled
yeah,
really well in the tests and has bowled like he's not playing his first test series. And that
yeah,
were again big shoes to fill because Jadeja was such a big player in test cricket at home especially. So
yeah.
I think Akshat Patel was terrific and again an important player to change the momentum of the test series. So that
Yeah,
I think was
I was
important.
also impressed by Washington's batting because in Australia and against England, he was picked as a bowling all rounder and he did more with the bat than the ball. So, and being
I
just
think the
22,
other thing, 100%. I think Washington Sundar forms part of a larger story of people who are given the opportunity and just are ready for international cricket. Whether it's
yeah,
Washington Sundar, Natarajan in the tests or the T20s, Shardul Thakur, Akshar Patel in the tests, so Shubman Gill. So I think there are just so many good players. So I think Washington Sundar is part of that story. But I think one other important takeaway, which if we're talking from Australia and carrying on to India, was Rohit Sharma, the Test match opener, which
yeah,
is now a much more secure conversation. We weren't quite sure, can we count on Rohit Sharma? He's missed New Zealand.
yeah.
He's only got runs at home. But I think there is a real improvement in Rohit Sharma, the test opener. And the final frontier for him will be getting runs in England, which I dearly hope for his sake and for India's sake he does.
Yeah. And I think after everything, one question would still remain over the captaincy of Virat Kohli, whether it should be handed to Rohit Sharma or not. Because I think after the IPL, we might get a few more answers. Because
I
if
think
asked,
Kohli, to be honest, I think Kohli's got one more ICC event in him. And I'd like to see how India fare in the T20 World Cup. And if they don't, I think they should win it. But if they don't make the finals, then I think that requires some serious looking into. I have no doubt that he still remains the best choice for Test captaincy,
yeah,
um, potentially even for ODI captaincy. But I can already see Rohit Sharma having a much bigger say, even when Kohli is captain, in certain decisions and field placing. So, but no, for T20s, and I'm not saying this as a criticism of Virat Kohli. I just think at times you need to absolve yourself of the extra responsibility, right? Maybe Kohli needs to just bat and allow for someone else to be at the receiving end of all this. So, so it's
but
simple as that.
just this one thing which I point out occasionally with my friends as well is that Kohli has never captained in a T20 ICC tournament, and this is the first one he'll be getting. So, would it be fair on him to just give one T20 tournament? Because before this, he has done two ODIs, one-day tournament, where we did get to
Yeah.
semi-final and final. And also, one point which I want to raise. MS Dhoni got 6 T20 World Cups. One just the first one, and then he was given 5 more chances. So when we judge him based on those many chances, would it be fair on Kohli to just be given one World T20?
Okay, so here's how I'd put it. Dhoni won an ICC event in 2007 and 2011. There was a World T20 in 2009 and 2010. So he
10.
won two out of his first four
Yeah,
ICC events,
yeah,
which certainly gives you the confidence that this man is capable of winning more, and and India's performance in ICC events was still very, very good, right? They won the Champions Trophy in 2013, right? Following that, so that was 3 out of. Have I got this right? They won in 13, didn't they? Yeah, I've got this right. So they won
Yeah,
in
yeah, they
13
did.
and lost in 17. So Dhoni had basically won 3 ICC events in a span of 6 years, right? Including two in his first four. Now, Virat Kohli has been captain since 2017, since the Champions Trophy. So you've had a Champions Trophy in 17, you've had a World Cup in 19, you've had a
That's all.
World, and yeah, now you're going to have the next World T20. So my problem is that I think India are making some pretty ordinary selection calls in key tournaments, and that has been a problem for India for a while now. I do not understand how they went into 2019 with if Vijay Shankar was their number four and Ambati Rayudu was their backup batsman, reserve batsman. How Rishabh Pant is suddenly batting at four, and I'm a big Rishabh Pant fan, but I wanted him to play 40, 50 ODI games going into the World Cup, and that never happened, right? When MS Dhoni picked a team to win the 2011 World Cup, he made sure everyone in that team had at least 45 ODIs behind them. He
Yeah.
gave himself a really good chance to win in 2011. Yes, conditions were in his favor, but that is what Virat Kohli has an opportunity to do now. Conditions will be in his favor later this year. And had it not been for the pandemic, we would have had one more ICC event to go by. So I would more rather look at how India go about selection, what tactics they approach, and were the selections directly responsible or reasonably responsible for India's performance. And I think in the 2019 World Cup they were. You have picked a team that did not give you the best possible chance to win a World Cup because you changed the balance of the team too deep into the tournament. You brought in a reserve batsman to play at number four when he had actually never batted there, I believe.
Yeah.
So Pant had hardly had one innings at four. You then went in, you got Dinesh Karthik in the side. Dhoni walked in at 6 or 7 in the semi-final. So all sorts of changes made, and everybody knew going into that World Cup that India's softer, the underbelly is very soft. It's vulnerable. So when you know that, you've not covered all bases. So I think that's where the buck stops at not just the captain, but also the coach and the selectors. So there's so much talent. India should be winning, or at least giving themselves a better chance to win. So I'd love to see what team Virat Kohli picks for the T20 World Cup, what team he plays conditions-wise, and that will be a more fair reflection. If he does 9 out of 10 things right, and India still don't win, no problem. But if he does 9 out of 10 things right, I believe there is no team that will come close to India winning. So why? I mean, that is the level of expectation I have of this team because they're that good.
Yeah, I just hope that these questions don't distract Indian team because Kohli versus Rohit, Viratians versus Rohitians, this thing on
That's
Twitter,
nonsense.
especially,
That's all social media.
spreads a lot of negativity. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and look, the thing is, you don't need to get along to be in a great team, right? So it's perfect. You need to have professional respect, and history in cricket is also evident to that. People who've not gotten along, they have been part of championship winning sides.
Yeah.
So all you need right now is for this team to gel well as a team, and for the captain to make sound enough calls. And there's no guarantee that the captain knows everything, but he needs to be smart enough to to trust the judgment of people who do. So if Rohit Sharma has a much better track record in key moments in T20 games because of his success with the Mumbai Indians, because of the kind of inputs he may have, then I don't think Virat Kohli is going to be so silly that at his own expense he won't take his verdict. We're already seeing Rohit having a much bigger role, and that's great. Dhoni had a big role when he was part of this team to try and guide and help Virat Kohli. So, and Kohli is an improved captain. Let's not be all critical of him. He's a far improved captain. I hope he just, along with the rest of the leadership group of this team, takes the right calls for the World Cup.
Yep, and I think cricket is such a thing that we can go for hours and hours, and still people would be watching us talk, and we won't get tired of it. But we have to end this now, and it was a pleasure talking with you, Raunak. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I did. Great fun. Thanks, Keshav. Thanks for having me.
And before I leave, just thanking all the people who are watching. Still, the comments are coming, but I think we have run out of time now. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Suman, for sending your comments. And I hope you guys, if you guys like the content, then please do subscribe to the channel. There's original music as well on the channel if you're a music fan, so you can check that out. So thank you, and we'll see you probably next time during the IPL or before the IPL. Thank you.